Ah, it's that time of year again. Time to sit around the fire, spending time with family, enjoying the sight of falling snow out your window, pouring yourself a glass of eggnog, hearing a scream from upstairs, racing up to your bedroom to find your wife lying on the floor in a pool of blood and... Is that eggnog? And the head wound perfectly fits the very glass that you yourself are holding. The sound of sirens approaches and you remember the one thing you really need for Christmas this year. A good lawyer. Saying that the Phoenix Wright series of games is unique is like saying the Mario series is mildly successful. The games invented an entire new genre of courtroom deduction and are to this day basically the sole occupiers of this genre, excluding a handful of indie games inspired directly by the Ace Attorney himself. The approach to the music of these games is also very interesting. Most games will use different themes to match the setting of a level or a character that you meet, and the Phoenix Wright games do this in the investigation portions between trials, but the bulk of each game takes place in the courtroom, standing across from the same prosecutor and the same judge, cross-examining witnesses and looking for details in the established evidence. To the uninitiated observer, it might seem like you're staring at the same scene for quite a long time, and if the music gave us a simple courtroom theme, like other games would give us a forest theme or underwater theme, the music would surely get old fast. It also wouldn't accurately capture how the game feels, as each trial is an expertly written roller coaster of twists and turns, surprise witnesses, and sudden objections. To carry the player through the dramatic journey of each court date, a suite of tunes is written for each game that falls into a handful of categories to match the basic emotional outline of each level. Every trial is a little different and each has their own unique twists and turns, but in every game you'll find some variation of the same formula, taking you from nervous anticipation as you wait for the trial to begin, to questioning the facts at hand, to blowing the case wide open. Let's take a walk through this formula and pick apart how this music matches our reactions to the plot, and how it pushes us along into the exact headspace the writers want us to be in at any given part of the game. Without further ado, the court is now in session. Each trial begins in the courtroom lobby, trying not to let your nerves show as you reassure the defendant, and the music for these sections varies from expectant to downright ominous. The original Ace Attorney game's lobby theme is an iconic piece of music. The harmonized synth lines immediately grab your attention, and then the slick pentatonic bass fills make you so glad they did. I think this is a genius way to create a musical sense of anticipation. The actual music is super high energy and creates a bunch of momentum, but then it cuts out for 2 full bars of kick drum and the subtlest little hi-hat fills in between each phrase. Creating a bunch of energy and then just cutting it off like this creates a very literal sense of anticipation in the listener, like, okay, but when's that sick bass coming back? And that feeling ports beautifully onto the character's anticipation of the start of their trial. Future installments of the lobby theme tend to lean more ominous. Trials and Tribulations lobby theme sits on the tonic B-flat minor chord for almost the entire piece, leaning heavily on the syncopated 16th note ostinato figure that does a wonderful job creating the kind of nervous energy you'd be feeling waiting for a trial to begin. This figure plays consistently for so long that when it drops out for just half a bar of silence towards the end of the loop, it makes for a great double take moment. Spirit of Justice's lobby theme feels a lot more somber thanks to the lush strings crescendoing into these nice thick minor 11 chord voicings. Once again, we are sitting still on a minor tonic chord the entire piece, almost waiting for the chord to change the way the characters are waiting for the trial to start. There's lots of space here, but all of the different ways of voicing the same G minor chord keep things interesting. It's worth noting that almost every game in the series was headed by a different composer, and while there's a noticeable shift in style from game to game, it's interesting to see how these different composers all use similar techniques to try and tackle the same musical goals. Static harmony and lots of space seem to be the key to this kind of tune. The nervous anticipation comes to a head as the characters enter the courtroom and the trial begins, and the "court is now in session" themes set the stage for the battle at hand. Justice for All's theme kicks things off with a bunch of big, strong, parallel fifths that'll have your first-year theory professors quivering in their boots. Trials and Tribulations comes in just as hot with a huge harmonized melody and what I always think of as the Bach keyboard pedal point thing, alternating each note of a melody line with one single pedal note, like so. These elements all add up to something big, something grandiose, but we're not creating very much rhythmic energy and not creating a lot of tension. It's a great introduction, but we're still saving something for later in the trial. I want to point out the approach to harmony in Trials and Tribulations theme because it's the approach we're going to see in basically every piece moving forward. The music in the courtroom is pretty much always in a minor key, specifically what I call a soft minor key, where the chords are all built on tones from the natural minor or Aeolian scale. You won't see any strong 5-to-1 moves like you would in a classical piece. It's a lot of 1 to flat 6 major 7, a lot of flat 6 to flat 7 to 1 walk-ups, and a lot of dipping down to the minor 4 chord and then walking stepwise back up to the tonic. The Court is Now in Session theme from the great Ace Attorney is an excellent example of this. We mostly sit on the tonic G minor with very soft moves to E flat, C minor, and an F chord that resolves back up to our tonic. These chords are each made much more interesting by the use of upper 7th and 9th extensions, a common feature of this soft minor sound, as well as the beautiful string orchestration. Now, if you notice the same kinds of chord progressions popping up everywhere in the examples to follow, I'm not gonna point them out. Take a shot, or yell "Objection!" every time you see this kind of thing moving forward. After the initial part of each trial, the music will usually take a break until the first witness comes on the stand, and I think that's a very smart move. The use of silence resets the listener and allows the composer to bring in a lower intensity piece later without it feeling like you're losing a bunch of momentum. Even when music is playing, there are some parts of the game where it'll drop out to silence underneath one specific phrase as a way of emphasizing what's being said without having to write a whole new musical cue. This is both efficient and effective. After a bit of silence, we feel things pick up when a witness comes on the stand and it's our turn to cross-examine their testimony. Each game has a cross-examination theme, and these usually do a really good job of capturing an inquisitive feeling. I think it has a lot to do with the rhythm. A piece that obscures the beat in some way creates a vagueness to the music, and in extreme cases leaves the listener looking for answers like, what time signature is this even in? The first game's cross-examination theme was simple, a dotted quarter note melody moving up an A minor scale with the bass filling in the space between the notes. It's not very rhythmically complex, but the simple fact of having the bass rest on beat 1 of each phrase and using this rhythm that crosses over a bar line is enough to get that questioning feeling that we're going for. Later installments use much more complicated rhythms to capture this effect even more strongly. Justice for All's cross-examination theme uses alternating 7/4 and 13/8 time signatures to just keep you from ever really settling into the groove. And I want you to listen to Dual Destiny's cross-examination theme and try and figure out for yourself where the hell beat 1 is before I tell you. Crazy, right? It makes more sense once you realize that the melody is entirely landing on the offbeats. That's right, it's in a simple 7/4 or 14/8, though the syncopation and odd 7-bar long phrases do a great job obscuring that fact. These cross-examination themes all have a subtitle of moderato, and each game features an allegro counterpart that plays when you cross-examine a witness's new testimony after catching them in a lie. The tempo picks up, a strong drum beat is added, and there's usually a small second section added in to contrast the original musical statement. I love this because the addition of a strong drum beat clears up the rhythmic confusion of the original themes, making it feel like you're getting closer to the truth of the matter at hand. Now, at some point in the cross-examination, you're going to get yourself in a tricky situation. You'll be put on the spot, needing to explain an alternate theory about the events of the case, or maybe the prosecutor will dump some new evidence on you that seems to seal your fate, and these moments call for a suspense theme. The same suspense theme gets used in every game because it is so simple and so perfect that no good composer would ever dare to mess with it. We get a driving 16th note bass line and a disco drum beat. Yes, that's it. The bass moves up from the root briefly to the flat third and then the fourth, just enough movement to establish a minor key tonality. This is all tension, a bunch of frantic rhythmic energy that just goes nowhere. It feels like something's bubbling just beneath the surface, but you don't quite know what it is. An important factor in this feeling is the lack of layers. If you threw some chords and a melody on top of this, it would turn into a huge, epic, groovy piece of music, but keeping it stripped down to just bass and drums somehow perfectly generates suspense. After working your way through a suspenseful situation, solving a puzzle, or establishing a new line of questioning, or seeing through a hole in the witness's testimony, you'll be treated to a truth-revealed theme. These tend to break up the tension of the suspense theme with a much more subdued drum and bass presence, while still building toward the climax of the case with a busy melodic line. The original Ace Attorney hits us with this Bach keyboard pedal point figure in 5/4 time over a repeating 1 to flat 6 progression, A minor to F. Trials and Tribulations gives us a variation on the exact same idea with just a hair more rhythmic energy as we rhythmically anticipate each bar. It's like we're getting a little release here while maintaining enough tension to keep the momentum of the case moving forward. My favorite Truth Revealed theme has to be from Apollo Justice. We have the same keyboard pedal point figure around the melody, but this time placed over a slower, more subdued, yet juicy groove in 4/4 time. I love the thick, clustery chord voicings underneath the melody. They almost add kind of an introspective feeling to the music. A serious quality that lends itself to the feeling of getting to the bottom of the case at hand. Now we come to everyone's favorite part of the game. The part where you find a real big flaw in the prosecutor's case. A big hole in the witness's testimony that totally changes their role in the trial. You stand up, throw that pointer finger in the air, and you yell at the top of your lungs, "Objection!" This is when things really start ramping up and you start getting hyped. The original game's Objection theme lays the groundwork for all the future games with this syncopated rhythmic pattern. This isn't the kind of driving rhythmic energy we got from the 16th note bass of the Suspense theme. This rhythm has a bounce to it that somehow simultaneously feels light and creates a buttload of forward momentum. Notice how this rhythm in the bass is placed against a straight 8th note rhythm above it, highlighting all the ways that this bass rhythm clashes with the straight beat. Justice for All takes the same rhythmic concept and uses a slightly lighter sounding harmony, this upper 8th note line alternating between A flat and B flat major triads over an F bass note to hit all of the upper extensions of an F minor 13 chord. Especially compared to the rest of Justice for All's soundtrack, which tends to sound a little darker than most of the other games in the series, evoking the brighter sound of the Dorian mode with this raised 6th here creates the sense that you're digging your way out of the hole that the prosecutors are trying to trap you in. Apollo Justice's Objection theme takes this bouncy dotted 8th rhythmic figure out of the bass line and puts it in these crunchy, clustery extended chord voicings. This still gives us that energy right from the top of the piece, but gives the bass some time to leave space and build up to that rhythm gradually instead of hitting you with all of the energy all at once. Trials and Tribulations shows off a cool variation of this setup by displacing the dotted 8th rhythm by an 8th note, starting on the and of beat 1. It's a little disorienting at first until some more layers come in to firmly establish the beat, but it's a very cool rhythmic idea that keeps the piece barreling forward. Like I said earlier, each trial has their own twists and turns that they take you through, and some will have you turning the tables on the prosecution only to have them turn them back on you, forcing you to turn the tables once again on them, and on until your table's legs are drilling holes in the courtroom floor. But after some pattern of cross-examining, being driven into a corner, and fighting your way out of it, the trial will start building up to its finale. There will be some key revelation, some lie that, when exposed, causes the witness to drop their mask and show their true colors, and when you seize the opportunity to drive it home, to pursue the truth right to the end and crack the case wide open, that's when we're hit with maximum hype. I'm talking about the pursuit themes, baby! We have to start where it all began. Building on its approach to the Objection theme, the original Ace Attorney's Pursuit theme takes this dotted 8th rhythm, sticks a 4th below it, and sprinkles in some rhythmic approach notes to the bass part to make it feel even more busy and intense. The 4ths slide around chromatically to give us some crunchy notes over our tonic minor chord, especially the flat 2nd scale degree, giving the music a darker tone than we're used to. Lots of different layers and counterlines come in to keep things sounding complex, and a big epic melody comes soaring in on top of it all for a climactic sense of release. Every pursuit theme is different, but they all share at least some of these characteristics. Justice for All's theme takes this same formula and shifts it around with sudden chromatic jumps, moving from our C minor tonic to B minor to E minor to B flat minor and back to C minor. Trials and Tribulations theme also uses the same structural ideas as the original game, but this time throws in some rhythmic confusion, with some sudden bars of 6/4 and 2/4 thrown in along with sudden modulations to new keys, keeping us on our toes. The Great Ace Attorney's soundtrack is conceptually very different from the early games, using an orchestra with heavy emphasis on the strings rather than synths and disco drum beats. But we still see almost all of the same elements from before used in the new setting excellently. The same rhythmic figure, the fourths in the chord part, the same harmonic approach, lots of different layers, and the big epic sweeping melodies. It is so cool to see how, across almost a dozen games, all with different composers, this series has created such a strong musical identity tied to these key parts of the game's structure. The music is pretty formulaic in how it's constructed and how it's used in each trial, but the way the pieces are arranged in the trial never feels heavy-handed. I never feel like the games are trying to manipulate my emotions in a way that's undeserved. The level of intensity and the characteristics of the music just totally capture where we are in the plot and expertly elevates the player's reactions to each part of the trial. It's easy to see why it's considered a cardinal sin to play these games with the music off. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and huge thanks to patrons Chris Anonymous and Ted Mackey for requesting these games. If you'd like to support the channel, or you just want a butt-ton of Phoenix Wright transcriptions, including, but not limited to, the tunes covered in this video, head on over to my Patreon here. If you had any objections to this video, you can write them down on a piece of paper and just throw them right in the garbage. I'm not a lawyer. I don't care. Thanks again for watching. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you all in the next one. Court is dismissed.